Okay, so hello everyone, whoever is listening to the recording as well, and welcome BK, Balakrishna, my friend. Both of us are locum ICU consultants. So there's a lot of talks going about changes in rules and legislations around IMGs. So we thought we would give you a little insight into what our experiences as IMGs in the UK have been. We both joined in quite different timelines. So I came to the UK in 2016, while BK has come in just a few years back, and we've had quite variable experiences within the UK. Which absolutely you can all relate with, whoever has been here for a few years and whoever has come in fresh. Why I wanted to talk about it is not just because there's a lot of negativity around what are we doing as IMGs in the UK, but then there are also a lot of things that the NHS and the government can do for IMGs, which they should know and which we can discuss about. So before I go ahead, BK, do you want to introduce yourself and say a little hi to our audience, please?
Yes. Hello. Hi. Hi to everyone. I'm Dr. Balakrishna. I'm working as a locum consultant, critical care intensivist at University Hospital of Birmingham. So I moved in the UK since last 3 years now. It's going to get 3 years in this March. And my whole training, like undergraduation, graduation, happens in India. So I started my journey in 2003 and I completed in 2018. So I did my super specialty, that is FNB critical care in India. Then I did my EDIC and EDIC, and then I enrolled for the GMC registration. I moved to UK in 2023 and I joined as a registrar in the ICU. There was a post of locum consultant, but it's quite a different environment. It's quite a different system in NHS. So I joined as a registrar for a year. And after a year, they offered me a locum consultant post. So I'm working as a consultant since last 2 years now. The 2 years is going to get complete now. So that's all about me.
Right. So moving forward, how this is going to work is essentially I have jotted down a few really important things that IMGs face as challenges when they come to the UK for the first time. And with those challenges, I have put in some questions, some polls for you to reflect. And I would appreciate if you have any reflections, anything to add in. Feel free to raise your hands or to just unmute yourself and give us an answer. So the first and foremost thing when you come to the UK, and feel free to say against it if you feel like it. You're not alone. So IMGs, when they arrive in the UK, all of them arrive with a dream. And that dream is to either train in the UK or to get acquainted with the UK systems or to find a permanent job here so that they can bring in their family and settle down. Some IMGs come here with the dreams of doing research. Some come here with the dreams of doing specialty training, and so on and so forth. But I wanted to ask you, to you, BK, when you first arrived in the UK system, how did you feel? Did you feel confident, overwhelmed, anxious, or all of the above? And can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think your questions are quite complex and even more complex than my EDIC and EDIC MCQs, Lubena. The thing is that I think it's a mixture of all the feelings because when you are moving from one country to different countries, other countries, uh, uh, it's not just about the NHS or a healthcare field. It's about there is a different society, the culture is different, food, weather, there are lots of other factors also, the financial aspect. And when you consider all those facets together, I think it's a mixture of all the feelings because when I moved to UK, in the NHS system is quite different. So it gives you anxiety whether you are going to survive, whether you are going to offer well, you are going to balance your life. So there will be a little bit of anxiety on an initial phase. But simultaneously, when you are very good in your core aspect about your critical care, when you know that you are doing these things since many, many years, so somewhere you feel little bit confident also that from technical aspect, at least you are very good in your particular field. So
Yeah.
somewhere I was confident for my technical aspect, but pertaining to the soft skill, pertaining to the NHS system, I was little bit overwhelmed and anxious. So if you ask me, for me, I think all of the above was a more appropriate answer based on my experience in last 3 years.
And it's quite daunting for me to say that when I came to the UK in 2016, I wasn't even GMC registered. So at that time, I basically came to the UK because I got married to a UK citizen, and love brought me here, and I had absolutely no clue what UK had to offer because I'd never considered even moving out of India. However, I had to, and then I had to figure a lot of things out myself. So initially, because I didn't know how the system was and because I'd not done any research on what was happening here, I felt quite confident. I thought, well, I have done so much studying and I've got so many credentials and I'm so, good, I am a good clinician, I would say. And I was like super confident in my skills and in other skills as well, non-technical ones. So I thought it would be an easy peasy thing to find a job and get through the GMC registration. And I landed in the UK in April 2016. And the first thing that I saw was snow in April. And I think that was the biggest shocker of my life because I'd just come in from a temperature of 42 to 4 degrees and had to wear a 40-kilogram coat. So that was one of the biggest shockers for me coming to London because it was nothing like I'd imagined it to be. When I started feeling overwhelmed was when my GMC registration kept on getting delayed. And it took 7 months for the GMC registration to come through. That was my first encounter with how slow things are in the UK, how everything is done on emails, how there is nobody, not a single human, that you can go to and talk to about your problems or how cold people are, how cold everybody and everything is, and how slow the system is. Because coming from India, where everything happens really quickly, just to get a GMC registration with a job lined up for me was like the biggest overwhelming factor for me in the UK. And although I tried to fill up my time doing lots of other things, doing an observership and stuff, which was again a waste of time, I started getting anxious when the GMC registration was not coming through. And finally, when I got my first job after the registration, that was the moment of truth and reality hitting me like a snowstorm. And I will talk about it a bit later. So those were our experiences coming to the UK in different timelines. Um, let's now talk about the invisible CV. This is what I call when you are coming here with a lot of experience from other countries. You have already trained in other countries. You have already done the stuff that you were supposed to do. You have put in the time and effort. You've done your post graduation. You've done your super speciality. You've done your exams, and then suddenly you are brought into a system where everybody thinks you are overqualified, but nobody gives you the job that pertains to your qualification. Was that the case with you, BK, as well? Because were you told ever initially when you came in, I think you worked as an SHO or a registrar, were you told that you were overqualified or you felt underexperienced at the same time?
Yeah, I personally, when I joined as a registrar, because see, when you had carried out all those degrees in your countries and you had lots of extensive experience, you were working back there in India as a consultant in tertiary teaching care hospital for 3 years or so. When you publish lots of chapter in the books or publications, when you join as a registrar, obviously you are overqualified for that particular task. And simultaneously, but it's very, very important also that NHS is a totally different system. It's a paperless system. Everything is, as you rightly said, The communication is based on the email rather than on the WhatsApp. So they are very, very professional. And the soft skill, the set decision making, MDT, the equality, a flat hierarchy. So I think there are lots of things that was quite different when I was there in India. We are very, very good in a particular technical aspect, but there are certain things that we are lacking, or particularly if I'm talking about myself, that what I was lacking was little bit fineness in this particular aspect about how to do appropriate mail to identify a right person, and how can I pass down the summary, or how can I transfer this one person from one hospital to another hospital for a referral. Because in Indian critical care, everything is under one umbrella. But I think in the UK, there is a dedicated center. So there is a neurocritical care, there is a cardiac critical care, there is a transplant critical care. So I think it's very, very important for us when I moved to the UK, how to do the referral, identify a person that this is the right time and whom to contact. So I think those are the things I feel that I was under experienced in an NHS system. And I went through that journey for 6 to 12 months, and I got little bit rough idea that helped me a lot when I become a consultant after 1 year. That gave me a little bit of foundation about how this system works, particularly in a USB trust, because the software is different in different trusts. So when you understand the software system well, how to prescribe medicine, how to do the referral, how to see the previous medical history of the person, you gather the information well, and you can communicate those things with your colleague. So yes, I encountered the same
But
feeling.
did your fellow registrars or did your nurses and other members of the MDT ever tell you that you are overqualified for the job?
So whenever we do see, sometimes while taking around in the ICU in the morning time, when they ask for your opinion and when you discuss about the evidence-based medicine, they felt that vibes that yes, you know about the core aspect of those things, but simultaneously, but that's a good thing about UK. They understand your limitation, they understand what is your strength and weakness. And if you ask me, my experience was very, very like people were very, very friendly. They were very, very supportive, and they told you that if you are not comfortable, please feel free so we can guide you. Sometimes they help you in initial 1 or 2 sessions so you can understand the things well, how to do the blood grouping cross matching, even a very, very simple things. For an intensivist, might be you have done those things might be 10, 15 years back when you are doing your residency, but
Yeah.
here you have to start from the scratch. So for those things also, they never judge you for those things because it's a new environment. So I think the nursing staff, even the colleague, even the consultant, helped me a lot to understand the system well. They guide me well. So I think many of the IMG people having that understanding or misunderstanding of like we didn't get a good support if you are coming from different country. But my encounter was very, very supportive, friendly, and all the nursing staff and the colleague from different countries, they helped me a lot to become a better intensivist in the UK.
Great. So I'll tell you the bits about my journey when because I have worked as a registrar in so many different hospitals in London, and I worked as a registrar for more than 5, 6 years before eventually becoming a locum consultant. And every place that I ever went to, I would have heard this many, many, many times during my rotation that you are too overqualified for the job. And this was coming from nurses. This was coming from nurses and the SHOs that used to work with me. And this was mainly because they didn't think that the kind of stuff I was doing, the kind of proficiencies I had in the non-clinical side of things, they thought I could easily be a consultant. And when I used to tell them that I was a consultant back home when I moved here, they were like, then why didn't they make you a consultant right away? And I was like, well, you tell me, this is your system. So you probably know better than me. And it took me a while. It took me a lot of research and asking a lot of people for help to eventually understand how the system worked, because there wasn't anybody at that point of time trying to help me figure out things, because they thought I was, well, so overconfident in everything, I would figure it out myself. But I was crying for help. It's just that I was not voicing it out properly and appropriately, which I learned in over the years that if I had asked for help much earlier, it would have been a different scene for me. But anyway, we'll go to our next slide. And this is again really important for people who are coming as IMGs from other countries. So BK, before you came to the UK, how many job applications did you have to submit?
See, I was very fortunate, I will say. So I was lucky enough that might be I will felt into a category of 5 to 10, or might be 10, 12, but not more than that, what I remember based on my memories. So yeah, I was fortunate, and I got selected at 2 or 3 places out of all 12 applications. And then I choose UHB Trust because my wife also applied. She's
Yeah,
a histopathologist, so she completed her FRC path. So we
yeah,
are trying to locate one area where we both are getting a job and our transportation is easy. And I think she got a job in New Cross Hospital in the Wolverhampton. That is, I think, 45 minutes away from the Birmingham. And that's why we thought of let's choose the UHB Trust for my job, that is intensivist, and let's choose her job in the New Cross Hospital as a
yeah.
histopathologist. And that's also very, very important because sometimes when you moved with the family, your wife is getting a job like that is 4 hours away from your particular job. So it's very, very important that you plan those things accordingly prior to
Mhm.
moving to the UK. So for me, I was lucky enough. But I heard a lot from the different members or IMG people that they tried more than 50, 100 application, but they
Yeah.
keep on waiting. And what I personally feel is that it depends on how you make your CV. And in my case, Lubena, you also helped me a lot when I made my first CV. I still remember how naive I was. I was not knowing how to make an appropriate CV for that particular job, despite you are working as a consultant. So I
Mhm.
was so that was the journey. Like before 3 years, I was not knowing, and I didn't have a CV also that whatever publication I had made, what chapters, and then I start gathering all those information, and then you sorted out that based on your job role, what they are seeking from you, you have to modify your CV, and then you apply for the job. I think that is the most common error we make, and that's why I think the rejection happens for most of the cases. But for
Mhm.
me, I think it was around 10 to 12 application I tried, and out of which 2 or 3 got selected.
So I think generally when different trusts in the NHS are looking for locum consultants, and especially when they are in a crunch and they get people from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh to come in and work as a locum consultant, it's much easier to get that job. However, I have mentored and I have spoken to so many IMGs who are still I'd say in the IMT level or SHO level or still looking for their first foundational job. And those people, and most of them, I'd say 90% of them have told me that, well, they've been applying multiple times to each and every job that is becoming available on the NHS jobs. Somebody has applied 100 times, somebody has applied 200 times. There was a guy who had done 300 applications to each and every possible job that he could get in the UK post his GNC registration, but he wasn't getting a single interview. So, as you know, I'm also quite interested in helping out people with their CVs and with their interview preps. I did tell them that CV is really important, and you have to also always remember what jobs you're applying for. You don't need to apply for 100, 200 jobs which do not match the job descriptions, do not match your credentials. You just make your CV so strong that you can then choose and select from those jobs, 5 or 10, and put all your effort in preparing a proper application for those jobs. And obviously, using AI is a big no, because AI, all the applications that are done with the help of AI, other than polishing your grammar, most of the applications look all the same, and they do not get shortlisted. They get rejected straight away. They do not even reach the shortlisting point of interview and other things. So yes, it is a very tardy job. The market is very, very tight. It will become tighter now as a lot of funding has been cut from many, many hospitals. A lot of LED posts are being cut down. Internal trainees are being asked to do more work and fill up those gaps. They are still happy paying locums. They are still happily paying 3 or 4 times the amount to locums for filling in those gaps rather than actually finding somebody and giving them a permanent job. So, yes, the market is very unfair. It is very tight. It is very difficult to get an interview. But if you are well prepared and if you are lucky, you can make it through and get an interview in maybe a place you would not like, which brings me to my next slide. I
Lubena,
have been, yes,
before you move to the next slide, I would like to add one point more. So,
yeah.
whenever you apply for a job, so they always mention what is the primary prerequisite criteria, what is the secondary or like a adjunct criteria. So, the primary criteria should be meshed. So, all the essential, those that is known as essential criteria. So, you have to read the job application. What are their essential criteria? What is the adjunct criteria or a secondary criteria? And you have to modify your CV based on three domain, that what are the degrees you have, how good you are in your core knowledge, like if you are intensive care unit, that you are good with your procedure, tracheostomy, ICD, whether you work in neurocritical care, cardiac critical care. That is one domain, that is core knowledge. Second aspect is a research. Okay, that is your second domain, whether you had published case report, RCT, meta-analysis, or even a simple audit, very, very simple audit. Okay, that is also important. The third domain is education, whether you had participated in any weekly education things, whether it's for MBBS student, MD student, whether you have participated like a poster publication in any of your regional conferences. So that will be a continue your third domain, that is education. So when you make your CV, just don't put how you good are in your technical aspect. Also add what is good about your research aspect, what is good about the education aspect, like medical education. And the fourth thing is that how good you are in your soft skill. Because I think in the UK and I think everywhere in the European countries, they are quite focusing on how good you are as a leader, as a team player. That is very important, whether you are involved in any conflict resolution, whether we involved in any mortality morbidity meeting over there. So I think that type of communication or soft skill, whether you are involved in a quality improvement project in your particular job curriculum in India or any other countries, so that is very, very important. You add in your CV, that matters a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gives you additional points as well. So, audits and QIPs give you additional points during shortlisting. Research gives you additional point during shortlisting. Any other trainings like ALS, BLS, APLS, ATLS that you've done, definitely mention those. Any other qualifications like MRCP or anything else that you've done in your home countries, but they are an international qualification, definitely mention them because that gives you add-on points. So that is all about CVs and interviews. Now, we talk about the ground reality of things. One of the most critical problems that IMGs face is the constant movement. So every time you look for another job or you go for another rotation, you go to a new hospital, you go to a new rota, there is a new life, and you start all over again. The rota system in the UK is really, really taxing, even for the trainees, the local people, because they are never set up in a single hospital. They have to rotate through multiple hospitals in the area, in the educational domains, wherever they are, in whichever system. Like, for example, if you are in east of England, then you rotate through a few different hospitals, few different trusts in that part of the country. So that is a very, very important consideration, as BK already said initially, that you have to always be constantly packing your bags, be on the move, find the job that suits you, but you have to, again, think about whether it's a short term or a long term contract. And eventually, you do develop a relocation fatigue, and then you would not be negotiating anymore, and you would just carry on with the same job over and over and over again because you don't want to move again. So some people get stuck in their careers, in their career progression, because they don't want that instability in their lives. Um, how often have you moved cities or hospitals in the UK, BK?
I think that's my first job, and I'm in a one place since last 3 years. I joined as a registrar for a year, and then I'm working as a consultant since last 2 years. So I'm here in one hospital in the same trust since last 3 years. So I'm very fortunate enough till
Mm.
now. But otherwise, I think relocating yourself in the UK is quite tough. And my wife is also doing a job, as I already told you, like she's working also as a locum consultant in a different hospital that is 45 minutes away from my place. So whenever we are planning in the future about relocating, it's very important for me that we both find out a job in one particular place. Suppose we are thinking of, oh, let's move to the London. It's a tough decision for me because my wife should also get a job in London along with me. And when you have a baby, so I'm blessed with one year old baby boy. So it's very, very important that you get a nursery on time. If you have a boy who is going to the school, then the schooling to find out a right appropriate school in that particular area. So it's tough for you as a family when you are moving as a family. It's not just a independent decision that you can take at any point of time. And the cost of relocation, moving to the another trust is also different. I think in most of the NHS, the system is nearly same. The rules, the clinical governance are same, but sometimes the software is different. The system for the documentation, the referral, I think there is a little bit of variation over there. So in my trust particularly, we use PICS as a paperless system, but might be in another trust they are using different type of system. So you need at least 3 to 4 months to acclimatize to a different system for the referral or to identify the patient's data. So it's little bit tricky, and it takes your 3 to 6 months to stabilize yourself with your family in a different environment. So it's quite exhausting. That was my experience, but fortunately, till now, I'm here in the Birmingham since last 3 years. But for you, Lubena, I think you had changed at least 6 or 7 jobs in the
I
London.
have.
I don't know
So
how you are able
my
to manage it seriously, because if I'll be there in your place,
uh,
it's
yeah, so I
impossible
think
task for me.
my experience has been very different. I didn't have to relocate myself because family is still here in London, but I had to be in transit. So I changed almost 7 different hospitals during my 7 years here because I was trying to get all my rotations done for CESR, which is, well, another mammoth we'll talk about later. So I changed about 6 to 7 jobs, and I was constantly changing jobs to get into more specialist ICU so that I could get my sign offs. And these hospitals were nowhere close to home. So it was taking a lot of commuting, which was getting on my nerves physically, mentally. It was exhausting. By the time you would reach for the morning handover, which is usually 8 o'clock in the morning in the ICUs, you would be completely exhausted. The rotas were very taxing. You'd be doing 4 nights or 4 long days in a row, and you would have nothing, no energy left for the weekend. The other things that I had been suffering from
Okay.
is essentially when I got my first consultant job in Birmingham, and I went to Birmingham without actually relocating there. I was commuting from London to Birmingham for my shifts. And that was, again, a very, very taxing time for me. Not only did it cost me financially, but I was also driving to and fro 2.5 hours each. It was exhausting living there on my own, living in hotels and living in B&Bs because the hospital wouldn't provide me with any accommodation was a really bad time for me. And that's why then I planned to move back to London and get whatever job I can here. So I think moving around takes a lot of your energy, a lot of your effort. And you have to be if you're moving around with family, obviously that's the most difficult thing to do. If even if you're on your own, it's still not feasible all the time. It takes a lot of effort. Um, there are Pran and Vasu on the call as well. I would like to ask you if you are an IMG and what has been your experience regarding moving the city. If anyone wants to talk about that. Rahul, Vasu, would you want to add in anything about moving cities, moving hospitals? Or we will just move on. Right. The next contention point, the family cost. So we have already touched a little bit about it. You have already told us about how important it is to consider what your partner does. And if they're also a doctor, then you have to consider what their career is. I do have an example of a friend who had an ophthalmologist as his wife, and she had to put her career on hold because he wanted to come to the UK as an IMG. So it's quite difficult for people to come in the UK unless both of them are GMC registered. And it's difficult to get jobs in the same place as well. So it's quite difficult. It was quite difficult for them. She could not work. She could not get a GMC registration for 2.5 years. And eventually they decided to move back to India because they were feeling quite isolated here. And she was not making any progress with her career. BK, I think it has been the same story with you. You and Chetna both have been trying to find job in the same place, so you don't have to move around a lot and commute a lot.
But
Um,
Lumena, I tried to relocate myself, I think 2 years back. After 1 year spending in UHB, I thought of this just a general ICU and I should
mm,
apply in like a specialized ICU because I was quite keen to do the ECMO or something like a transplant ICU, and that's why I applied in the London. But
yeah.
unfortunately, Chetna didn't get a job in the London. Then I thought of
Mm,
it's going to be a terrible journey. So if
yeah.
I'm working in the London and she's working in a Birmingham, and then you and a
Yeah.
baby, and then the transport, and that's why I cancelled my job in the Imperial College. I got appointed in the Imperial College,
So
but
you
then I
got the
cancelled.
job, but you had to
Yeah,
decline
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. I have to decline,
Okay.
and then I continue as a consultant over here. So yeah, for me, it was also a tough decision when you move with the family. Yeah, it's
Of
not
course.
easy.
Right. And next is the financial reality check. So you have to be pretty rich if you are coming here with no backup, and if you are on your own, and if you wish to bring your family in as well. Unless you've done a lot of research, you would not know that UK pretty much is one of the most expensive places to live in. And for you, there will be additional costs as an IMG. Not only do you have costs like the visas and childcare if you're bringing in children, but you also have to constantly show them that you're upgrading yourself. You have to pay for your exams, you have to pay for your CPDs, you have to pay for additional training. Sometimes you are going around the whole country trying to get your CPD sorted because you need a particular number of CPDs every year because you need to do an appraisal. So there are a lot of things that are very costly. In London, especially, the cost of living crisis is a real monster, and it's not just something that is being discussed in the parliament or in the papers. It is an actuality. People are actually living through it. They have to make a lot of compromises to get their children into schools. They have to make a lot of compromises in their careers so that they can put bread on the table for their family. And this includes the doctors, which is why we are having all these strikes and everything else, because the inflation is too much, and the amounts of money that you're just paying to be an IMG and to be on the GMC register while you are here is substantial. Um, so how has your financial journey been, BK? Have you ever struggled?
So if I'm talking about my personal experience, I think the first 2 or 3 months in the UK is quite terrible when I moved over here because you can see the difference or an impact. Because when I was there back there in India, I was consider myself as a rich person because I never thought of whenever I want to buy something, I got enough money, I got enough saving. But when you move to a different country, the currency got changed. Sometimes you are not getting paid for first 1 or 2 months because you are opening your bank account and all those things. So I think that process is little bit slow in the UK. So sometimes it takes 2 months to get your salary because you have to open the bank account and all those documentation and the process is lag behind. So sometimes it take 1.5 months to 2 months to open a bank account. Then you will register those things and then the salary will be paid after 2 or 3 months. So you have to survive in this country for for 2 months. So you have to think of adequate saving prior to moving to this country. So at least you require 5 or 6 lakhs. If I'm talking about Indian currency, that should be there in your backup when you are thinking of moving. And if you have a family, and if your wife is not earning or if she didn't get a job, then probably that calculation and the summarized thing will get changed. So for me, it was 2 or 3 months. That was a little bit hard, I will say so. But after 3 months, my wife got a job, and then probably our life is a little bit better. But just to summarize, if two people are earning in the family, then life is okay in the UK with the cost of living at this point of time. But if one person is earning in the family, even if you are at a consultant level post and you have a family of 3 or 4, like 2 children or 1 children, I think the life is quite tough because you paying rent, you paying a council tax, you paying a water bill, electricity bill, car insurance, transportation allowance, and all those things. And if you summarize all those things, it will cost you around 4,000 or so, like a grocery. So if you are earning 4,000 to 5,000 pound, I think you're hardly saving 500 or 1,000 pound, and sometimes nothing also depends on your liberty of spending money. So is quite tough for me the first 3 months. That's all about my experience. What about you, Lubena?
I think initially I was, because I wasn't GMC registered when I came here, I was totally dependent on my husband. So I used to get pocket money to spend, and he was taking care of all the household expenditure. After that, I started when I started as an SHO, which was my first job because I started from a scratch. I wasn't making a hell lot of money, and whatever money I was making, a big part of it, a big chunk of it, was going into paying for my annual GMC registration, paying for all the the society fees, all the CPDs and training stuff that you have to do. And these training and CPDs are not easy to get. Anything and everything in the UK has got a cost to it. So you don't get free CPDs. If you want to earn a CPD by attending a study day or something, it would cost you anywhere between 150 to 250 pounds. If you want to do, say, a thing like ALS or APLS or EPALS, it is easily anywhere between 399 to 499 pounds. Unless you have got a job and you have got a study budget allowance with your contract, which you can use for this. But the study budget allowance is no more than 600, 700 pounds for somebody who is at a registrar level. So I would suppose for an SHO, it will be still lesser. And sometimes as an IMG, you don't even know how to access that money. There is the fund available, but you don't know how to access, and nobody tells you unless you go and ask the right people. And sometimes it's really difficult to find those right people. So I must have paid hundreds and thousands of pounds just to get all the CPDs and trainings and everything else that was needed for CESR sorted. Following that, CESR itself is a very, very expensive thing to do. So it's now called portfolio pathway, and it's your alternative pathway to get into a specialist register. It costs you £2,000 to for your first application. It costs you another £2,000 for a review application. And unfortunately, if you can't make through it, then you have to appeal against the decision, which costs another £2,000. And if you have to reapply, then the cycle repeats. So it's a good £10,000 that you should have in your pocket before you are even applying or trying to apply for something like a portfolio pathway or an alternative pathway to specialist training. So it is expensive. And if you see now, even GMC registration, keeping your name on the GMC register is becoming costlier by the day. It started from 300 something pounds when I first registered in 2016, and now you're paying almost 400 pounds. This is in a span of 10 years. It has increased by 100 pounds. And it is just to keep your name on the register. That's pretty much it. So I think it is expensive, not just being an IMG because of your other expenses, but also if you need career progression from the professional side of things, from the professional fees side of things, it is very, very expensive being a doctor in this country. They are taking more from you than they are actually giving you, is my conclusion. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is the bit that starts once you get a job in the NHS as an IMG. So a lot of my colleagues who are IMGs and who I've spoken to, they said they never got an induction. Induction is something like an orientation, but it is more professional. And it's basically introducing you to the various systems in the hospital, to the various things that a new trainee should know. Okay, a new trainee from the UK should know. It is not anything specific for the IMGs. They have not tailored it for the IMGs at all. So, unless you have already worked in the UK, half of the things that are told or that are discussed in induction, you would not know what they're talking about. So, unless they tailor the induction to IMGs and unless they make it really specific for us, 90% of us will come out of that induction, which is like a 2 day thing, only knowing how to log in and log out of the system. And that's pretty much it. So nobody tells you what different sorts of IT systems are available. They do make you practice it, but it's impossible to know the system in just 1 hour of that mandatory training. They make you do a lot of mandatory trainings online, but nobody does it in person, and you wouldn't know what the online shit is all about. And there are a lot of local practices that no one talks about. So many of my colleagues who came here as locum consultants during COVID did not receive an induction. They were straight out asked to shadow one of the other colleagues who was already working in an intensive care. And this is, I'm talking about a consultant level IMG. They were put in a system that they knew nothing about, in a very high stake system like intensive care during COVID without a proper induction, and they had to figure it out themselves. So you can imagine the amount of stress, the amount of anxiety, and the steep learning curve that they have to go through. And this is not just for the locum consultants in intensive care. This has happened with a lot of IMGs who have ended up in the wrong places that do not provide proper induction and orientation and a period of shadowing. So if you're an IMG and if you're going to apply for a job, the first thing you ask in the interview is, am I going to get a shadowing period? And the shadowing period should be at least a month before you can actually say that you know a little bit about NHS and a little bit about the hospital that you're working in. It should not be a few days. It should be at least a month. You have done shadowing, BK, haven't you?
Yeah, I did a shadowing for 1 month or so. Yeah, that's very, very important from the medical legal point of view also, because when you are moving to the different system, you are prone for errors. And you know that if medical legally if something goes wrong and if you had not followed the right path for a particular system, it's quite risky for you and for patient both. So from patient safety point of view and for your own safety point of view also, I feel that induction is a must, yes, before jumping into.
Yeah, and it should be tailored to IMGs if they are giving an induction to IMGs. Not many trusts that I know of across the UK who have a tailored induction for IMGs.
Yeah,
There
and
has
it's a
been a
quite
lot of
a subjectivity and variability also. So it
yeah,
varies from trust to trust. So in some of
yeah,
the trusts, they're having a proper system for the induction program, while in
yeah,
some of the trusts is very random. Like one
yeah,
person will come, will tell you 1 hour or 2 hour of
yeah,
lecture, and you
yeah.
hardly get 10 or 20% out of it. So that's very quite tough.
And majority of the stuff that is really important and that you need to know is
Yes.
just brought down as an e-learning module that you can pass by just passing the e-assessment. Not many people read through the whole thing anyway. um okay, let's move on. Now, this is something that every IMG suffers from, this innate anxiety of looking stupid in front of somebody because they were asked a question and they didn't know the answer. And this is also quite proportional to how senior you are. So if you're a very senior person and you're joining in as, say, a registrar or at a consultant level, um, the first thing that you would think is, I don't want to look stupid. And because of that, you would try what is known as avoidance behavior. and you wouldn't be brave enough to go and ask for help. Even if you don't know something about the system or something about the place that you're working in, you are very, very afraid of going and asking for help. BK, have you ever avoided asking for help at work?
Yeah. Out of all the options I will mention, like I still do those things. Like sometimes, because see, I think that component of little bit of like we always feel that somebody will judge you. Okay, if you don't take a second opinion or a third, I still having a habit of not taking a second opinion. Sometimes I'm trying to do some heroic stuff. Sometimes I feel that it's a gray area and I should take a second opinion, but try to avoid it. I feel that probably they are going to judge me even for this simple thing. I'm taking a second opinion or not. But just to give you the idea, see, in our India, people judge you. They will judge you that even if you are not knowing any silly things or it's a very simple aspect or simple evidence-based thing. But there is a quite a difference in the UK and European countries that they feel proud and they feel that you are doing a safe practice when you are taking a second opinion and when you are thinking out of your mind. So think out loud, whatever is there inside your brain, please share with your colleague, irrespective to their whether they are consultant, whether they are at a reg level or whether they are at a SHO level or a nursing in charge. Please feel free. Don't feel ashamed that it is a very silly question. I'm not knowing how they are going to judge me. Nobody judge over here. Obviously, they are happy to guide you. So I personally feel that still I have that component of feeling like might be inferiority complex or I should not take a second opinion. I think I still do those things. Might be is there because of my cultural background. I trained in the India for 33 years. So it's very difficult to change your mentality. But I think we have to develop that habit of asking and set decision making with our colleague in the UK. And nobody is going to judge you for that.
Yeah. And I think I did struggle with this in the first year of my working in the UK when I was still an SHO. But then I realized it really quickly that if it wasn't a matter of looking stupid or looking silly, if you didn't know where a certain thing was or how a certain thing was done, but it was more about it was a story you were cooking up in your mind because you have been in India where everybody shames you in public in front of your colleagues and all the staff that, oh, you don't know such a small thing. What have you been doing? And this is not just once or twice. This happens multiple times in your career, multiple times during your residency. You get shamed in public. And because of that, you develop that mentality of not asking for help. But this is something that is really different in the UK, and this is something that I do like about the NHS. That even if you go and ask somebody who doesn't know an answer to your question, they will find somebody who knows the answer or guide you to them. So that is a very good culture in the UK, and probably one of the most liked thing by me in the NHS. There are not many things I like about it, but this is one of the things that I like about NHS, that nobody judges you for asking for help. So even if I'm doing a ward round as a consultant and there is something that I don't know, I feel quite confident saying, well, I don't know. What do you think? And this is a question I put up to my SHOs, and they feel quite happy going back and finding an answer for me and come back and give me an answer. This also gives the authority in their hands, and it's part of good leadership. So yes, if you're coming to the UK as an IMG, feel free to ask for help and do not think that you would look stupid if you don't know something, because it's a foreign place, a new culture, a very new environment for you, and there is going to be something or the other that you do not know about the system and somebody else knows it better than you. So yes, ask for help when you need to. Communication. Oh, this is another aspect, and this is something that many of my colleagues from the past 7 or 8 years have spoken to me about. And it's not about an accent. It's not about a thick Indian accent or a thick African accent or a thick Pakistani accent or a thick Bangladeshi accent. It is not about. It is how people hear, perceive what you said, and ask you to repeat it a few times because they can't get you. Again, there is a sort of cultural nuance to it. They've not heard that accent before, maybe. Maybe it's really new to them. Maybe they don't understand what you're saying. Maybe it's your turn to make them understand what you're saying. Speak slowly, speak in a way that they can understand. Even if you can't change your accent for them, just put it in simple words and speak slowly. They would be able to understand. Sometimes, when we come from other countries where we're not taught things like empathy and compassion and love and care, and all we think is about treating patient, making them better, and getting them out of the hospital, sometimes when you talk, your tone occurs to people here as more aggressive than assertive. Even if you're right, even if you mean the best for the patient, and even if you mean the best for your colleagues, and you've said something to your colleagues in what you think as an assertiveness, they can take it as an aggression because they've not heard that tone before, or maybe because they think that that tone is not proper. It might be proper for you because you come from a place where that tone is considered as normal, but that's not normal for them. So there is always this idea, and a lot of people do come to me as well to say, well, this person hasn't talked to me properly or has been very aggressive, and then I have to tell them that it's not them being aggressive; it's just the way they talk. It's their way of talking, it's their tone. And then I have to talk to the other person, give them the feedback, and ask them to dial down their tone. We're also sometimes really loud because we're working in environments where we are seeing 50, 100 patients a day in casualty, and gynecologists and other people are always shouting at their patients, and that's common in our countries. It's not common here. So you have to be really careful with communication, and soft skills is something that is an absolute must for you to learn when you come to the UK as an IMG. And you learn it with practice, you learn it with observation, observing your seniors, observing the other people around you, how they talk to the patients. You can even learn from, people like people who serve coffee, people who serve snacks. Just looking at them, observing how they talk, you can take up a few qualities of communication from them. So even if you've got a thick accent, don't worry about it. You can still be very compassionate. You can still show a lot of empathy, even with an accent. It doesn't matter. BK, you have anything else to add? Have you been ever misunderstood while you were correct? You said something, but it was misunderstood.
I think it's multiple time and it's exhausting because sometimes I speak very fast and you already observed those things that I'm quite a poor listener and I speak very fast. So sometimes it's very difficult for my colleague to understand, even if I mentioned all the right thing, all the evidence I am enumerating. Sometimes it's very difficult for them to digest, and I have to repeat my communication 2 or 3 times again and again. And sometimes I perceive that might be they understood those things, but sometimes not all the people are intensivist, and then you have to understand that their limitation, that level of work. Sometimes they are FY2, they are FY1, sometimes they are at the JSD level, they are the nursing in charge. So I think your communication should be in a more simplified way rather than in a complex medical terminology. So I think that's the main problem with my communication. If I'm talking about myself, that I speak very fast. First thing. Second thing, sometimes I use very quite complex medical terminology. But I think in the UK, you have to make it more and more simplified version, give them a target, don't use all those evidence-based thing, because at the nursing level, they need whether you want to do it, don't want to do it, what is the target of saturation, what is the target of blood pressure, don't make it more complex for them. I think, and that's why I think most of time I get misunderstood. So it's very, very, and I'm evolving in last 2 or 3 years, and might be you had also observed the communication of Lubena is very soft spoken. She take a pause in between, the tone is changing, where she want to emphasize, she's emphasizing on the key words. But if you see my communication, the tone is little bit higher. Sometimes you feel aggression, sometimes I'm just keep on talking irregular. So I think that's very, very important that you will learn from your friends or a colleague, and it matters a lot. Communication matters a lot in UK.
Yeah, I think the thing about active listening is also very important. So you wouldn't understand who you are talking to, and you wouldn't understand your team members if you're not listening to them. Even if it's a very say a very taxing scenario like a CPR effort going on, unless you listen and unless you close the loop of communication, you would not understand what's going on, and it will all be just a lot of hoo-ha around somebody who is dying or will probably be dead in a few minutes. So I think developing that quality of listening to others before saying things, and also looking around you, observing other people, and taking up their qualities is really important. Again, I'm telling you, it's not about English language. It is never about English language. We all know that we've done most of our qualifications in English. It doesn't matter if your English is not, it's not like Shashi Tharoor level. It doesn't matter. Even if you're able to convey your message in a few words, in a few phrases, that's all that your patient and your colleagues need. So you will eventually improve your communication skills, but you also have to look at the non-verbal skills like your tone, the way you speak, the way you express compassion, empathy, and those kind of things. Um, they don't do any communication courses, by the way. So it is something that you learn on the spot when you're working. Um, Progression, career progression, a very big contention for many people who come to the UK with like big dreams. So if you're coming to the UK just after your MBBS internship, you are probably looking at getting into foundation training, and that will be your pathway of choice. But then again, with the new legislations coming up, you are not sure whether you would be prioritized for IMT or ACCS training, and whether you'd be prioritized for the specialty training. So it is becoming difficult by the day. There are also other things that make it more difficult for IMGs to actually pursue their choice of career progression. There is lack of mentorship. There are not many people who would want to come to you and tell you what you should do. There are not many people who would listen to you without judging you and give you, proper advice. There are very few people who are active enough to, give you advice without monetizing it. So it's really difficult getting a proper mentor. There is a lot of gatekeeping. The gatekeeping has increased now because they're trying to give most of the training jobs to the local people. So IMGs are taking a hit. I would say a lot of IMGs come here following PLAB. They try to do observerships. They try to do attachments. I don't think that makes any difference to your eventual job application. Attachments and observerships cost you money. They are not free in most places. They cost you thousands of pounds. And if they're not going to matter when you actually put your application in, then you should try and avoid wasting your money there. The other stuff about CESR, portfolio pathway, whether you go into an alternative pathway or whether you just continue being a registrar for a few years and then find somewhere else and go there. There is a lot of confusion. It is a very personal choice. You have to take a lot of factors into consideration. I'll let DK talk about this because he's still confused about a progression plan.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like when I moved over here, I thought of I'll do the ECMO program, something like that. That was my aim when I moved to the UK, and then I'll end up with normal general ICU intensive care. Then I'm blessed with baby boy, so your priority will get changed. I thought of I'll complete my Caesar in 1 or 2 years, but that's not easy. You require a very high inspiration and motivations to keep yourself motivated to do the Caesar. It's tough. It's tough with the family. Your priority will get changed, and even after 3 years, I'm still confused. I'm a decision dilemma whether I'm going to do the Caesar, no Caesar, want to do ECMO, no ECMO, should stay in the UK or should go back to the India. But I'll say it's a dynamic decision. So even if you came up with one particular goal, might be you will not achieve it, but still it's a life lesson, and you can go back to your country after 3 years without achieving anything. That's fine to me, but be flexible, okay? And please keep on changing your plan based on the need. So at different phase of life, it required different you. Initially, if you had thought of long-term UK settling, if it is not achievable, and if you are not happy at the end of the day, please feel free to change your plan. Don't fixate it to one particular idea about Caesar or a ECMO or staying in the UK, even if you don't like it for long term. So yeah, it's a life lesson. It's not about good or bad. The decision I'm not regretting about coming to the UK. But if I don't like it, yes, feel free. You have options. You are quite well qualified in your country. And nowadays there is a globalization. So yes, please feel to change your decision. Don't stuck there. in one particular system?
The emotional toll. So this is something that most of the IMGs face, especially if they don't have a community background, if they are not part of a society, if they don't have people from their own communities, and if they're not able to socialize enough. And this is something that everybody who comes to the UK on their own feels: anxiety, isolation, imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is something when you blame yourself for everything and you feel like you are in the wrong and everything else that's going wrong is because of you. And that is something that many IMGs feel at the end of the day, because they find it very difficult to digest that it's the system and it's not them. It's the system that's creating trouble for patients and it's not them. The amount of moral injury that you get in the NHS sometimes is also quite high. You may feel hyper vigilant at times. You may question every decision. You may question everything. You may ask for a second opinion for everything that you're doing. You may lose the confidence to decide on your own. And those are the things that do come in as part and parcel of being an IMG. It gets better with time. It gets better as you make more friends. It gets better when you start socializing a little bit. It gets better when your family is very, very supportive. So, all those points taken together, there is a high emotional toll to be paid as an IMG moving to the UK, especially if you're coming from countries like India, where socializing is like part and parcel of life. Here, it is not that easy, and you have to find your own people. Have you questioned your decision to come to the UK, BK?
No, I already mentioned those things in my last slide that yes, don't regret your decision. It's always a life lesson, whether it's a good or bad. And pertaining to the social life in the UK, just to tell the other team members that see, in last 3 years, I hardly develop any friends in the NHS apart from you, Lubena. But you are my friend since anesthesia days. So if I don't
Exactly.
include you, I feel that social life is quite isolated in the UK. So we have to just deal with it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay. So, what do we need then? We do not need sympathy. We need structure. We need guidance. We need proper mentorship. We need proper induction. And we need transparency. See, many a times when people apply for jobs as IMGs, they do not they do not think that they've got the right to call the HR or whoever has posted the job and ask about what the job is all about. So sometimes we just go by whatever the application says. So we need to be quite courageous in ourselves to question everything that we will be going through. You have to question whether you'd be given support to move, or what is your sponsorship arrangement, what's the visa processing time. You have to be aware of those things. And for that, you need to do a lot of research. There is a lot of guidance available online for these kind of things. There are a lot of Facebook groups that discuss these things on a very regular basis. So find the right people to clarify whether this is the most appropriate thing for you to do. From the NHS and from the UK, what we need is career clarity, mentorship, stability, and a sense of community. So those are the things we'd be looking at. And finally, we need to reframe the narrative that we are not behind, but we are moving from a country to another, from a system to another. We are carrying more experience with us than many here. And we are also trying to adjust into a completely new environment all by ourselves. So we are doing much more than what the locals are doing. So we should not be considered as somebody who's coming from a third world country, but we are somebody who is bringing a lot of experience from a low resource country, which we've been running for years. And resilience should not be the entry requirement for any IMG in the UK. I think that is probably, so these are the things that NHS and UK and the government really need to think about, the trusts really need to think about, is a proper IMG specific induction so that we know what the culture is, we know what the systems are, we know what the expectations from us are. And we should be given some time to digest all that information. We should have a named mentor from day one. And this mentor could be a human with all the answers. It could be another IMG who has been settled already in the UK, and they make the best mentors. Clear progression maps. This again, there is a lot of difference, a lot of subjectivity in how we decide whether we need to go to training or whether we continue as a SAS doctor or whether we take up CESR. Even CESR is quite subjective. Some people get it done really quickly, some people don't get it done at all. There is a lot of effort that goes into it. There is a lot of motivation, as BK said, that is needed to complete it, and a lot of time and energy. And even then, it's a big gamble. Whether you go through it and whether you get through it are two different things. Transparent criteria for readiness. Again, no more mystery thresholds and moving goalposts. They should give us a shadowing period, standard shadowing period, and then decide whether we are ready to go and play our game as a proper SHO or a registrar in a new system. We should have protected time for portfolio and exams. We should have standardized signposting. We should know who to email, when to get what we want. For example, if you need your study budget, then who to contact, how to get that study budget, how to get it into your salary so that you don't have to pay 500, 600 pounds for getting your basic training. There should be psychological safety in the environment that you're working in, and you should not be judged. Communication support obviously is needed because you're coming from a very different part of the world where communication is not really given much heed, and because the patient load is quite a bit to actually sit down and talk to people. The nuances, the tone, and the specific expectations from the UK, they should all be taught before you are sent into that system and before you go and talk to patients and their relatives. Early career check-ins, you should get a named educational supervisor or clinical supervisor who should check in with you every 3 to 6 months to see if you're doing okay, if you need any more support. They should be able to give you the support, not just make promises. And practical life support, obviously your organization, whichever trust you're working with, should be able to give you guidance about securing housing, getting childcare, getting your children to school. And they should make life easier for you, not just because you're an IMG, but because you're an IMG and you don't know the systems here. So I think that would be the end of today's presentation. If the system depends on IMGs to survive, then supporting them is not kindness. It's basic infrastructure. They need it. Anything less is organizational negligence dressed up as tradition. That is an opinion that I hold and I stand by. As a doctor, I always question what I feel is wrong, and so should you. Even if you're an IMG, even if you're scared, to stand up for yourself. BK, do you want to say any ending words?
No, I think that was a great presentation, Lubena, and I think you had covered all the aspect that is needed for someone who is moving or planning to move to the UK. I think you had covered financial aspect, you had covered social aspect, you had covered infrastructure aspect, the induction, the process. So I think it's very, very important. I think nothing is left from my side. I think we had discussed and covered most of the things. Thank you.
Cool, amazing. Thank you so much, BK, for joining me. And let's keep talking about things that matter.
Totally. Thank you, Lubena.
Thank you. And I will stop recording here.